Okay, so I love watching the YouTube videos of positive birth stories, and I decided I wanted to tell mine as well of my first and upcoming second once it comes around in about a month or so. But my little guy, he's sleeping right now. He is 16, 16 months, 16 and a half, almost 17. So, and he'll be 18 months when the second one comes. So, anyhow, a little bit of a backstory is I grew up with my mom always telling me about her pregnancies and her births and how they were always so easy and so like Uh, she never ever described any pain, ever. In fact, when she was telling about when I was born, she didn't even realize she'd had me. She thought she'd actually made a giant poo on the bed. So I was thinking that was going to be my birth. Mine's positive, but it's not quite so oblivious. um, so I was also the second child. My mom later told me that with my older sister, it was um, it was um, it was more noticeable. Her longest labor she ever had was about 3 hours, and that was with my younger sister because she was the biggest baby, and the doctor had drained all the water and made her have a dry birth, and so she was always telling me never let them pop your water. So I had this phobia about letting them pop my water, which comes up because I didn't realize I didn't take any classes on giving birth or any breathing classes, anything. It was really my own fault. A lot of the things that ended up happening that I wasn't like planning on happening with my original birth plan. So I was about 20 weeks, maybe, I think about 20 weeks, somewhere in there, in the 20s, when someone introduced me to the concept of hypnobirthing. I'd never heard of it before, and I was like, okay, I know I live in a very, I still live, but I moved from one hippie type village to a different one. But is that I was like, okay, I know this is a really natural hippie place, but hypnobirthing, hypnosis, I wasn't into that like that type of stuff. Like I'd heard like about hypnosis and only like either way. So I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And they're like, oh, I'll give you like this all the CDs and everything for free. Like I'll just like give them to you with the PDFs and everything. It's all digital, so I'll just give it to you so that you have something, and it really helps women have really easy births. Like, well, my birth's already going to be easy because it's in my genes, that's what my thought was. I'm not, it's going to be fast, it's going to be easy, there's going to be like no problem. And almost. So, again, had I taken birth classes and learned about the science of my body, probably hypnobirthing would have worked a bit better for me the first time around. I've definitely fixed that for the second time. I've been doing lots of hypnobirthing classes. The Positive Birth Company is great, the digital pack. And so, anyhow, so with my first one, it was just someone giving me these CDs, and I started listening to them, and I'm like, okay, so this is more just like guided meditation and not really like hypnosis that I could understand. It's like a guided meditation where you get into a really calm, relaxed state. And I still have them, and I'm still listening to them as well, along with the other, like the Freya app that I have for the second time around as well, because I wasn't timing my contractions or anything at all with the first one. I was completely oblivious. It's like I didn't know the 511 rule, I didn't know any of this stuff. So to get to the point, here around, okay, so I will say one of my mistakes, or like it was a big mistake. I went camping in my 39th week of pregnancy, and he came on his due date on the 40th week. And so I went camping 3 days before his due date because I'm like, oh, I gotta get the camping in before I have this baby, because after I have the baby, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to go camping again, and I just need to go camping for a couple of days. And so went camping by the lake. I stayed out in the lake because I got out there and I was on the noodle for hours with no sunscreen, no shade. I was just like, I don't have to support my body. I don't have to feel the weight of this like belly. I just sat on the noodle for hours. I had my husband come out into the lake and give me like sandwiches and hot dogs and drinks. And I'm like, I'm not leaving the water. So all my birth photos from my first one, I look like an overripe peeling tomato because 3 days later I gave birth. But even so, the day right before I like we had gotten back from camping, and I decided I was gonna hike down the mountain and hike back up. And there was something at the bottom of the mountain I was planning on doing that I didn't get a chance to do. But I hiked down there and it was closed, and so I had to hike back up. Um, and I got home and I was thinking maybe I'll hike back down later in the evening when it's supposed to open up, and never got around to it. I was too tired. I'm like, okay, well, I've been busy. And so pretty much my mistake was I used up all my energy. All my energy. I didn't get to sleep until 12 that night because I had a lot of energy and I decided, oh, I'm going to clean my house. I had no idea that this meant go to sleep. Go to sleep. Don't use energy, conserve energy, and go to sleep. That is what I am planning this time around. Lots of sleep. Um, but anyhow, so I go to sleep at 12:30, somewhere around there. Around 3 in the morning, mind you, I hadn't slept much before. It's like camping, staying up late, eating like snacks and like hanging out. I went camping with several friends and different things. So it was it was a lot of expended energy and not a lot of sleep. So I woke up at 3 and I'm like, I hadn't had any Braxton Hicks. I hadn't had any like false alarms. And I felt like these contractions. I'm like, oh, yay, it's happening, right? And it actually was. Like, I hear all these other birth stories and they're saying like they had had Braxton Hicks so many times before. And they were like, but for me, it's like never had any Braxton Hicks, never had any of that extra stuff. And I'd heard about Braxton Hicks, but they weren't really on my mind. So it's like I'd never thought or considered them. And I'm just like, okay, this is labor. And and before I called, like it wasn't really my midwife I called. It was a midwife in the area that I wanted to ask particular questions. I called and I'm like, hey, should I go into the hospital? Um, Originally I wanted to do it at home, but it was too expensive to pay for a private midwife. So it was going to be in the natural ward in the hospital area. And so she's like, oh, you still sound okay and everything. I'm like, well, my mom really went really fast, and all the doctors, like, for my little brother even, it's like the doctor barely caught him because he turned around and had to like catch him. And I'm like explaining this to the midwife. Family, my sisters had her first baby and came really fast, and now she's had her second baby, and that one took 3 hours. And so, and she had both hers at home. Like, this next one's gonna be at home. Um, so anyhow, I'm like filling these. I get on my birthing ball that I had, and I'm like super excited. 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm thinking this is gonna go fast. Again, no classes, never read up, never realized that it could take days even. Um, uh, Luckily, mine didn't take days. It took a day, 27 hours. But it was, I got on my birthing ball. I put my headphones, like these really big, massive headphones that I don't know where are, probably under the couch. But I put these huge, massive headphones on and I turn up the music to max and I'm just bouncing on the ball, dancing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's coming. And every contraction, I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited. And they weren't intense yet, but they were definitely getting much, much, much more intense as time went on. And I'm like, okay, so maybe we should go to the hospital now. Because I'm like, I didn't realize that it was supposed to be to the point where you can't breathe when you're supposed to go to the hospital. Um, or like when you're throwing up. I don't know. That's kind of fuzzy. But the app I have technically tells me now when I'm in established labor. So, so this time I'll know with timing my contractions and when I'm in established labor, and I'm actually paying for a midwife this time around. So it tells me when to call her when I'm in established labor. But with the first one, no clue. So I knock on my door, I tell my neighbor, I'm like, okay, I'm headed to the hospital. Um, and she told me afterwards, she's like, she has 4 kids, and she was like thinking to herself, she does not look like she's ready to go to the hospital. But she's like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, she's like, I hope everything goes as quickly as you want. And it had been, let's see, it was around 10 o'clock in the morning. And I was trying to get a hold of my support person. Like, she liked to call herself a doula, but she was my support person, not a certified doula. And I was trying to get a hold of her 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. I even had some people going to her house that early in the morning because she wasn't picking up her phone. She wasn't even at home. She was apparently out at a party. And she's like 60 years old or something. Anyhow, that was that case. So I had to end up like the midwife, who wasn't actually my midwife, ended up calling another person she knew to at least come and be my backup, who was willing to do it with no charge. So that person came in. Oh my gosh, I loved her. Like, I absolutely loved her. I didn't want to switch her. Like, I'd never really, maybe I'd met her once, but I'd never gotten to know her. And I didn't realize she was a certified doula midwife in America. And so, anyhow, so she came, and oh, I loved her energy. I loved how she was. She was very, like, all around. I loved her. And I immediately clicked everything, and it's like, but when she left and my actual support person came in, there was a clash of energy. So that was another thing. It affected my environment. Also, going to the hospital affected my environment because I really believe I was going pretty fast at home from like 3 to 10 a.m. I had gone from like, who knows, to a 4 when I got to the hospital. And so I was actually going pretty quickly. And I really believe the taxi ride, because I get very motion sick. I believe the taxi ride affected my environment enough to like stall the dilation a bit. And then once I got in, I hated internal examinations. Like, if there's one thing that I remember that I hated that was more painful than anything else, was the internal examinations. The contractions or surges, whatever people want to call them, the waves were not as horrible. Like, they weren't horrible at all. They were very doable, very manageable, especially if I'd had enough sleep. But, yeah, no, I didn't. And so, anyhow, so the internal examinations, I've only heard like one other video talk about it, like how it was like, ugh. It hurts. I didn't like it. So I told my midwife this time around, either we're not doing any or we're doing the absolute minimum amount because I do not want those. I really believe that also stalled out how fast I had been going before. I also have difficulty communicating with a lot of the midwives there, and they were more like suck it up buttercup attitudes. And I just like, there was only one midwife that I really liked, but her shift changed. Like, she wasn't there when I was actually like giving birth, and but while she was there, it was very nice. It was very nice, and she went through the birth plan with me and went through what I wanted, like no pain relief unless it was gas and air if I absolutely wanted or like decided to do that. Now, my dad had flown in to the country and had landed about an hour after I got to the hospital. And so he took a train straight to the closest town that the train goes to. And then because we're up in the mountains, it doesn't like fully come all the way up. So we had a friend go down, meet him and bring him to the hospital, which was about another hour. So all in all, his trip took about like 3 hours from the airport to the hospital. Either way, so he gets to the hospital. I hadn't seen my dad in over a year or so. And so it was really nice having him come in and having him around. And however, it picked up in the conversation area. And I realized with this one, I don't want anyone talking to me. I want to be very focused. I want to be very into the hypnobirthing, like listening to the positive affirmations, listening to the guided meditations, the hypnosis, the relaxation. Gonna have my headphones in, and I want the minimal amount of conversation this time around. I learned that with the first time. Like, my support person was talking, and I kind of just toned her out after a while. Very well. Just kind of stopped listening to whatever she said, and I think it sort of offended her in the end. So, but it was my birth, not hers. And so she was also offended I wasn't using her breathing methods. So I wasn't breathing right. I've actually offended someone by not breathing right. I've probably offended someone by breathing. But anyhow, probably one of my sisters. Either way. So lots of talking. And at the time, I guess I didn't really think about it. I didn't mind it so much. But it was in hindsight that I realized that it was kind of, I wasn't able to get into the zone like I wanted to. Because when people are talking around me, I like to talk to them and be engaged in conversation. And it just like, this time I want to be more like in a zone. Not as much conversation, be in a back room, be in a dark area, like candle lights, low lighting, whatever. Not a lot of conversation. So it hits about 15 hours of having been in labor. And like I said, I got to the hospital around 10, and it was, I have no concept of the time. Let's see if I just know it was 15 hours in. So several hours. The sun had come up and gone down. Like the sun, I think, was like in the middle of setting or had gone down just barely. And I started throwing up. And again, because I hadn't done any classes, any like learning about my body to properly prepare as I should have. I didn't realize throwing up could mean I could go from a small, like a 4 dilation to a 10 within a short amount of time. So I started throwing up, and that is where I was like, I got 15 more hours of now throwing up. And I'm like, I have a bit of a phobia of throwing up. Not so much anymore, but for at that time I did. Now I'm more expecting it. I'm ready for it this time around. I'm ready to give into it and not fight it. But I didn't realize that it was part of the process of possible even transition. I didn't know. And so I'm like, oh no, not 15 hours of puking. And like I said, I hadn't had enough sleep. And so it's going on 15 hours of running a marathon that I hadn't prepared for. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't even stand up. I'm shaking. I'm like, people are having to halfway carry me to the bed because I'm so tired, having used up all my energy, having hiked, having gone camping, having not eaten, and just like, I'd used it all up. I had no energy. I couldn't even like roll over in the bed anymore. I was kaput. And they're like, you need to like get some sleep. I'm like, I can't. They're too intense. The contractions are like, they were really intense for a really long time. Like really intense. But it's like, they said that the reason, and I don't quite understand this still. They said the reason that it was so intense so early on and for so long was because the baby was already really low. But I wasn't dilating. So they checked me and I was still a 4. And then I was throwing up. And so that's why I'm like, I've got all this time that I'm going to be throwing up now. And I've only dilated to a 4. If someone had explained to me, like actually explained the science, like, okay, like they could have told me that in the middle of labor and I would have been like very happy. I'm like, okay, let's keep going. But they're also like, you don't have any energy to push. Like, you can't stand, you can't roll over in bed, you don't have energy right now, you need to go to sleep. And I'm like, I can't go to sleep. I've been trying now. I was trying to go to sleep in the middle of contractions, but there was no middle, really. There was no middle. It's like, it was on and on and on and on. And there was not really a break, maybe a minute or two in between, and not enough to go to sleep. And so, as much as I wanted it natural, as much as I did not want to get an epidural, I ended up getting the epidural. So I would say that was the part that did not go according to my plans. Is I got the epidural and finally got to sleep. But I only slept for 4 or 5 hours. By that point, they came in and like I told them minimal amount. And I'm like, even so, no one told me that epidurals don't fully work on some people. So I could still feel things, which I was happy about because I wanted to feel things. I wanted to feel the contractions, but they then had all the monitors on me and everything, and I wasn't able to move around. But every contraction I was having, every surge, the monitor would like move and it wouldn't pick up the baby's heartbeat. So this concerned the doctors. I really wish I would have like just said, screw you, it's fine, because it was fine. Instincts, I knew instinctually that it was fine, but they're like, oh, they had to put stuff in my head. And I wasn't as prepared. I hadn't had classes. Again, all this was my fault. So either way, they ended up asking to break my water because I was 9.5 centimeters dilated or something like that. And they're like, and it'll get the rest away. And I'm like, no popping the water. No, no, no. And they're like, it's gonna come pretty quickly anyhow. It's like, with this just gets the rest away. And I'm like, I can't pop the water. They're like, well, we can't monitor the baby's heart, so we don't know what's actually going, because every time you have a contraction, it's not picking anything up. And your contractions are really, really close together. So it's like, we don't know if the baby's in distress. And I'm like, the baby's fine. He's kicking me. He's fine. It's just like, but, that was my thoughts. It's like, as long as the baby's kicking, he's great. He's got the energy. And so, they ended up telling me like the science behind popping the water and why that would work, because I'm like, explain it to me why you want to pop it, like why it works. And I told them, like, my mom said never let them. They're like, well, for a dry birth, we don't do dry births here. And so it sounds like she had a dry birth, but we don't do that. What it does is it just helps dilate. They just explained it. Okay. And so I was like, okay, fine. And that's when my support person started arguing with me about it and like fighting me on the decision after I decided to do it. And yeah, that was fun. But she was trying to help me think everything through. I know that. She was trying to advocate and make sure that I was thinking everything through, and it wasn't just like a fear of, oh my goodness, the baby's heart rate. And it wasn't fully like the baby's heart rate, but it was like if there was a possibility. Either way, I am appreciative that in some way she was like trying to get me to think it through. But in the moment, I just kind of got upset at her. Because I was like, I've made my decision. That's my decision. That's it. So, they ended up popping the water. And from the time they popped the water to the time, like right after they popped the water, I really don't remember there being much time. I dilated the rest of the 0.5 and they said start pushing. And it only took like 20 minutes, which apparently, now that I've looked it up, is pretty good. 20 minutes pushing time is pretty fast, at least from what a lot of people have been telling me. But, and what I've been looking up, like some people push for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I was like, well, at least I didn't, at least mine was only 20 minutes. But either way, it's, I was pushing, and the midwife that was there, she was telling me to push down, push down. I was afraid of getting hemorrhoids, like really bad hemorrhoids, so I was terrified to push down. It's like, I could feel it, I could feel my body pushing, and I'm like, it feels like my rear end is going to explode, and I'm going to have the worst hemorrhoids in the world. I'm like, I can't push, not down, I can't push down, but I was like pushing here, like I was like pushing there, and then she kept telling me, push down, push down, push down, and I just kind of screamed, I am pushing, like at the top of my lungs. And then I realized, I haven't heard my husband say anything. I haven't heard his commentary on any of this. Like, what's he doing? And I look over to where my husband was sitting, and he is snoring, passed out in the middle of it. And I just about laughed so hard. I'm like, of course he would be. And so, if another contraction wouldn't have hit right then, I probably would have laughed really hard. But so I went from being angry at the midwife to being absolutely hysterical toward my husband because he was like sleeping and snoring, and I hadn't heard him snoring until I looked at him. And and then I went back to being angry that the baby was still inside of me, and who cares if I had hemorrhoids I was gonna push. And so I'm like, okay, that's it. Who cares? Push. And it took about like 20 minutes. I probably only pushed like 3, 4, maybe 5 times. Don't really remember so much, but I had a small tear, minimal stitches, according to the doctor. Although every single stitch, I kept asking, "Is that it? Is that it? Is that done? Are you finished?" Because I really don't think that anesthetic worked so well. So, but it was. They said it was a small tear and minimal stitches, and that it was like really quick. And so I'm like, okay, well, I had my baby. They put him on me right away, and again, no classes, no nothing. So I didn't know it was a skill that you had to learn how to breastfeed. I just figured, oh, that comes naturally. Everything comes naturally. Anyhow, so I just put him on, and thank God he was natural at it. He just latched on like, yeah. I also didn't hear him cry till he was about a day and a half, maybe 2 days old, because they picked him up and they put him straight on me, and I just latched him. I'm like, oh, I get to nurse, and so I just like started nursing him, and he latched right away, and I was like, he never cried until like about 2 days old, because it's like I kept him on me practically the whole time. Other than the short bit that my husband went with them when they went to like weigh him or whatever, like they did a lot of it in the room, and after like an hour or two, like they like picked him up and did some stuff with him, and then they gave him back to me for a couple of hours. Then they went and like cleaned him off, got him dressed, whatever, because I didn't have any of the clothes with me. Or no, I had clothes. I just didn't have the right clothes for him. Because they said, oh, he has to be in long sleeves. Didn't know a baby had to be in long sleeves with footsies. Now I do. I really was so oblivious. Yeah. But yeah, all in all, it was actually really good. And so I don't remember them giving me, like, people talk about like them giving you toast and tea, and I don't remember any of that. Like, I know eventually I ate, but I don't remember when. I was just like, oh, my baby, he's back. Hi. And I was like, picture, video, mom. Um, Anyhow, yeah, so that was mine. I consider it very positive, even with the change of plan with the epidural. It may not have gone as natural as I had originally planned, but it definitely went positively. This next one, haha, much, much more prepared. I decided not going into it as naive and understanding that even the second one can take a long amount of time. It can take just as long, especially in the early stage of labor. And so I'm just like a lot more prepared for it. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it at home. And my mother-in-law, haha, so won't mention that. Anyhow, but yeah, so it's like little guy still sleeping. He, I don't know if that's normal. Maybe you guys can say in the comments or something. 16 months. He still like takes 2 naps a day for 2-3 hours at a time. That's good for me. He sleeps from 8 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. So, and has 4 hours of sleep in the day. So it's like, I get stuff done. I clean the floors. I do the dishes. I do stuff while he's sleeping. 2 hours, perfect amount of time. But yeah, so it's, I don't know if that's like I don't know. I keep expecting him to go through like this sleep regression. Everyone keeps talking about sleep regression, sleep regression. I'm like, okay, so it'll hit. Probably once this one's born. You know, that's probably when it's going to happen is this one gets born, that one stops sleeping. That's probably what's going to happen. I mean, it's the law of siblings. It has to be something like that, right? All right, anyhow, I've talked enough. Thank you for listening. I know I said comment or something, but I'm not sure I'm going to have comments. They might be turned off. We'll see. Either way, yeah, so that was my experience with my first one. Sort of long-winded, but did I miss anything? I don't think so. I think I actually got everything in. Yeah, that was it. Now I've got my birthing ball, and I've got my hypno stuff, and I've got my actual class, and I'm actually going to be sitting down with my husband, doing the class with him when he's not working. This coming week, he won't be working, and so gonna be sitting down with him and letting him like learn a little bit about what everything is. And this time, oh, there is something I forgot. Okay, so after I had the baby and they put him on my chest, my husband says that one of the midwives kicked him in the shin to wake him up. Like, not hard, but he's like, he got a kick in the leg and the shin. And she gave him the dirtiest look and said, "You have a son." And so it's like he's always remembered that. He's like, oh, he's like this woman kicking him awake and saying, "You have a son." So this time we don't know what the baby is. The first time I did learn what his gender would be. This time we don't know, so it'll be a surprise. And I think I'm partially doing that also so that he doesn't get so like, I don't know. Either way, I'm making him be more active this time around because I didn't understand what a birth partner was supposed to do, or a birth, like I understood like a support person. I didn't understand what a doula really was, or what they were supposed to do, what a birth partner was supposed to do, any of that. So I really got to give a shout out to Positive Birth Company because I've learned a lot from that, and a lot from the Facebook groups that I'm a part of on positive births, and also to all the other YouTubers who put out their like positive birth stories. Thank you. I love watching them. They are so inspirational. And so that's why I decided to do this, is I wanted to inspire someone, help someone if it helps. But yeah, so I figured others had helped me. Why not share it forward? So I'm excited for my next one. I'm really excited for my next birth. I'm super excited. I'm excited for like the actual birth, like feeling the contractions again and like actually being at home and actually being able to do it like really like with the mind, and like I'm super excited for it. But this time I know when it comes, first contraction I feel, it doesn't matter what time of day it is for me. I know like they say just go about your day as normal. It doesn't matter for me. It's like I'm gonna go take a nap. I'm gonna have someone watch the baby, get a babysitter, something, daycare, whatever. I'm going to take a nap. And I'm gonna sleep as long as possible. And then once it gets to the point that I can't sleep, then there's the bathtub. And then after the bathtub, then it'll probably just be like guided meditations and yeah, guided meditations, calm spa music. Like I've been looking up all these amazing like positions to work with on the birthing ball, and possibly with my husband. Also lots of oxytocin. It's like remaining calm and like keeping the oxytocin flowing. So I'm like super excited for this one. I was super excited for the other one too, but it's like I'm like super excited for birth. I'm super excited. Okay, so thank you everybody for watching. Wow, 40 minutes. Okay, thank you.